The views and opinions expressed in these historical letters that may contain vernacular used in the World War II era, the post-war era, and the Cold War era do not reflect the views and opinions of any of the individuals involved with this project, including, but not limited to, the podcast's creators. All right. Morning, Jamie. I'm looking outside my window right now, and it's really drizzly, really rainy. It's January 2026. We're going into letters today from January 1951, and it sounds like the weather is about the same today, right now, as it was 75 years ago. Wow, I still have to keep the numbers moving. From Sweetie's content. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, Drew here too. And both of us, I know, are recovering from things, and we're both like kind of just like in a very low energy state right now, which is a great time, I think, to sit down. And I sat down this morning and read through these letters. And I'll tell you what, regular listeners to the podcast know that we have been having a situation with Aunt Jeanne. There's been a little bit of tension there. So, and in every episode, I keep waiting to resolve or come to some sort of head with this tension. And I have to go ahead and just give it away right now. We're still not getting any resolution, but we're still getting some tension.
Yeah, it's building again. It's like we keep amping up that tension between the two of them.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking about this this morning, Jamie, and I was wondering, is this the most tension that we've, for an extended period of time now, it's been going for probably about like a month or two. Is this the most tension that I think in the letters we've felt between Jeanne and Sweetie for the entire collection so far? And I think it is.
Oh, hands down, like because we did have some times when, in the earlier episodes, when she was counseling Jeanne through some relationships problems, and there was like a little bit going on there, a little bit back and forth. But yeah, I think this is definitely the most that we've felt, and I am curious actually to get to it and see like what's going on. So we did end our last episode, just a quick recap, just to get people like situated and get myself situated. The last letter we had was one of the biggest ones. Let me just get to the beginning of it here. I'm just trying. There we go. Okay, January 15th. That was her last letter. And it was the super duper ultra mega. And we learned about the Regina that I'm going to go touch as soon as I get there to your house. So we got a little recap of Christmas and a lot of like, she talked about various things. She's trying to get some tires from Jeanne. But that was a very, very long letter. And so this letter, we are on episode 89. What's the title of this episode, Allison?
Wrestling with My Conscience. She's going to do a lot of that in this one.
Well, how many do we have today? We have 4 letters today. That's a treat. Starting off the new year, right? And so the first one is from January 18th.
County Line Road, Hatboro, Pennsylvania, January 18th, 1951. Dear Mama and Papa and Jeanne, this is not a regular family letter. I'm just sending a copy to Jeanne to keep her up to date and to apologize for not writing so often. I did write a big letter that you've received by now. I didn't have stamps to mail them on the rural route and missed the mailman, so they got held up here for a day or two. Well, here's my problem. Seems like I always have one of some kind or the other. Tuesday, I did a big washing. It was cold and windy, and I made Louis stay in the house. He went into his bed, where I had stripped off the sheets to wash, piled up his covers, and while I was outside hanging clothes, he entertained himself by jumping from the bed into the covers on the floor. He knew he'd be in a dutch if I caught him, so he slyly stopped when I came in, and then resumed it when I went out. I didn't know this until he came to me at about 3:30 and said, "Mama, my head hurts awful bad. I think I bumped it." I started inquiring what made it hurt, and then came the story of jumping off the bed into the covers. I fixed him an aspirin and suggested he lie down on the davenport for a while. Discovered he had a temperature of 100.1, and started poking and asking if this or that hurt. His throat hurt a little, and his head was giving him a good bit of pain, so I untied the ribbon on the sofa, but he didn't sleep very well, and I was up several times in the night when he groaned, but didn't actually awaken until 5 a.m. when he woke, went to the bathroom and said his head was hurting awful bad. He couldn't show me one particular spot it hurt, just all over. I gave him more aspirin, and he went to sleep. His temperature was gone, too, at 5 a.m. Till after 8 a.m., woke to say he was feeling much better, but couldn't eat any breakfast, not because his throat was so sore, but because he was nauseated. I could tell by the way he talked that his tonsils were swollen, and so with the aid of a spoon handle looked into his throat to see his tonsils, enlarged, not so very red, but with white spots on them, and thinking that must account for his god-awful breath, discussed it with Lou, and decided I'd take him down to the Naval Hospital. Lou begged off and went along. They looked him over and said it was not inflamed enough to be real tonsillitis, but agreed with me that there was a white spot on each tonsil. He called it by name, which I cannot give you, but since his temperature was down and he seemed to be recovering from the nausea, said no medication but watch for fear it might flare up suddenly, and said perhaps we'd like to have his tonsils out. I said no, unless it was necessary to do it. The last sore throat he had was in October, and he hasn't even carried much cold until this sudden flare-up. He said he was glad to have me say that most people regarded it as routine, and the sooner over with the better, and he also said that he didn't feel that this alone warranted taking them out, but that he is at the age where they should begin shrinking and causing less trouble, and it looks as though they are doing just the opposite, and should this continue or get worse, then they probably should be taken out. He said, though, they wouldn't do it on his word alone, that the ENT head had to examine him and make the final decision. Said it was a minor thing, but that complications could arise. The head of the ENT clinic does the surgery, with the pediatrician's ward care. When I say ENT head, I mean head of the U.S. Naval Hospital in the city. I would not worry about the surgeon, for I feel he would be excellent. Louis would go in on Monday afternoon, they'd take them out on Tuesday, and we could bring him home on Wednesday, and it would cost us only $1.50 or $1.75 per day hospitalization, making a total cost of $4.50 or $5.25. He is practically well today as far as the headache and nausea is concerned. Sulfa tends to make him sick at his stomach, so I attributed it to that. I did worry about the headache and neck hurting him, but he said it was those glands at his throat and his tonsils, were as I told you. He is playing and eating all right, and my spoon handle shows the white spots are not so large today. He is big enough now that I think I could talk to him into staying at the hospital without the tearful storms I had to go through when he was a baby, and even telling the truth about taking the tonsils out, he'd be adventurous enough to try it. I think the doctors are to be relied upon, but I don't think there will ever be any doctor but Papa, and so I have to write and ask you what you think about it. I told the doctor my dad was an MD, and I'd like to write to him about it, and he sort of grinned and said he was sure you'd say to go along with them if it were necessary, and I'm sure too. It doesn't look right now as though we'd have to do it right away, but should he flare up, and they said take them out, shall I just say okay and follow through? Shall I send a wire, come at once, or what'll I do, Papa, or it's all done? Actually, I'm partly kidding, for I know that it would be done by a good surgeon. He'd have good care. It would cost me a fraction of what it would cost anywhere else, and I'm not worried about him going through with it particularly either. And I shall not consider having it done unnecessarily, though the doctor said they wouldn't do it unnecessarily. But I just hope you'll write and say that I should use my best judgment, and if they say take them out, to go ahead and do it without too much flurry and unnecessary excitement. This is not imminent, but write what you feel about it anyway.
Do you remember, like, when you were younger, did you ever have your tonsils out?
I still have my tonsils. I never had them removed. My sister did, though, which is weird because we're twins. So one had the issue and the other one did not.
Mm-hmm.
So who knows?
That's definitely something that I think was the more common when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the doctors have come away from that. It's not necessary. I think there are some cases, and I'm speaking from personal experience and from anecdotal stories that I've heard. I have a friend who, like, his daughter, like, she needed him out, and then once she got him out, she stopped getting so sick. I think in this case, it's definitely not necessary.
Yeah, not at this time. Yeah.
No, but it's weird because, you kind of see, like, how that's still a problem today. Like, we still have tonsillitis and we still have that surgery that, like, happens. And I don't think he needed it, but she's very thoughtful. And she explores all these avenues, and this is definitely a decision that isn't made lightly. And so I do appreciate that.
I do think she'd get in trouble if she didn't tell her dad about it, though.
That's
if
true.
all of a sudden in passing they were visiting and she's like, oh yeah, we decided to get Lou's tonsils out, Chester would be like, why didn't you consult me about this matter?
I get the feeling from this letter that she is genuinely asking her father's advice. She's not doing it under, like, she's not being compelled. She doesn't feel forced, like, oh, I better tell dad. Or she's like, no, my daddy is, like, the only doctor. My daddy is doctor. So it's like, he's like end all be all. And I think that, she really truly sought his advice. But Lou is getting sick as much as he did. He's not getting nearly as sick as he used to.
Yeah, the worst time period, I think, was Norwood. And I think there is something to be said about the proximity of Norwood to the oil refineries that were extremely active in that environment when they were in, for people that might not have listened back to these episodes, if you look to the Norwood, Pennsylvania time period, this is really late 1946 and into 1947, the entirety of 1947. Sweetie, at that time, the family's living in lower Delaware County, down by the river. Near Philadelphia. There's a lot of refineries, and she starts to suspect that area is not good health-wise for little Louis. So, and once they move, I think he clears out his lungs in Lacona, Iowa. I think he gets that good prairie reset, sort of thing. And then they come up to Hatboro, where they're in a rural place. I'm using air quotes for rural here for our audio listeners, because it's not like that anymore. But when they're there, she's, there's a farmer behind, there's a tree line, he's getting a lot of fresh air. So environment had something to do with it, but still, Louis when he gets sick, he really does get sick. So this time she only reached for the sulfa bottle the one time. She says, oh, here comes the ribbon off the sulfa bottle. And I can play that medical disclaimer, obviously, everything.
Oh, you have to. Oh, I love that thing. It's so funny. It makes me laugh.
Special disclaimer. The medicines and other medical treatments noted in these historical letters from the 1950s are specific to Sweetie's story and might not be recommended today, or are even more regulated than they were so many years ago. As such, none of the medical information contained within these letters is to be construed as medical advice. Talk to your doctor. Thank you for your attention to this message. Now, back to the show.
Yeah, and if you haven't heard those episodes, a great way to hear those episodes is if you subscribe to our YouTube channel and click that notification button. So if you could do that, that would be great. And audio listeners, if you can go through all those channels and send those emails, we'd love to hear from you guys.
Yep.
But moving on, we have a little bit more of this letter.
We are having some good days again. Fine for the fuel bill, and for my money it can just continue till spring, when good weather comes anyway. I have the magazine ready to send you, as mentioned in the family letter, and as tomorrow is Lou's duty night, I shall have the car and go into the post office to mail it, and this too, as I've written it too late for the mailman. Watch for the magazine and take good care of it, as it is Joe's, until I can buy some myself. I hope you'll soon send the Demaree book too. Joe is on TV tomorrow night, by the way. He plays the part of the editor of the newspaper on The Big Story. I don't know anything about the part, how big or how little, but hope it is a good one. Marguerite wrote that Friday is her day off, and so she is going to the auction sale and hopes that things go cheap enough for us to buy. They did not list the furniture as antique, so there may not be as many dealers as usually flock to sales at the very mention of the word. I suspect there will be plenty anyway, and I'll be surprised if she gets much. Marguerite is taking some vacation to fly down to Texas to see about her mother. She goes often to the cancer clinic at Houston. I told you about the operation to remove the gland in her neck when I was home, but now she seems to be losing the use of her right arm. It will be an expensive trip, I fear, and because she has so little time, she can't afford the time to go by train, as it is almost a week's ride from here. Well, several days anyway. We've put an ad in the paper for some of the stuff to sell. The Regina, the 4 plank-bottom chairs, etc., but since we have no phone, people can't call up to ask about it before they come out, and we are out far enough that they don't want to risk driving out for nothing, and so we have few answers. I think if we had a phone put in, we'd do far better. But there is only a 4-party line available at $2 or $3 per month. I've forgotten the exact rate, and any calls outside a certain limit are extra, and expensive as can be, so I hesitate to have one put in. I shall try to write Jeanne very soon, a more personal letter, and I had a very nice one from Florence just yesterday. I shall try to answer it very soon, and then forward it to the folks, and they can send it to you, Jeanne. I should answer the others too, and will soon. Love, Sweetie, Lou, and Louis.
The phone.
Yeah.
I've often wondered, like, why they haven't gotten one or, like, what the cost. I mean, I'm sure it was cost prohibitive, and that seems to be the case. But do you remember, too, when we had, like, cell phones and we had long-distance calling and you can only call after 9 o'clock or only on the weekends and stuff? They seem to have restrictions as well. Like, you couldn't have so many calls.
Yeah.
And you would get billed extra, so, like, that $3 a month could turn into, like, easily $5 and, like,
she definitely has some connections. If she wanted to get a phone and really get it installed well, we have to remember that Frank is working for Western Bell. So, like, she has people in her family that are really knowledgeable about the communications industry that's going on. That being said, I'm really grateful that she actually didn't have the phone for so long, that she wound up in this tradition of letter writing, because even when she does get one, she couldn't really call Jeanne. I remember in the 80s, when she would talk to Jeanne, she would wait until Sundays on the weekends and like the nights, because that's when the long distance calling would be less money. And she's calling to Jeanne in Iowa. And despite this, the amazing thing about the collection is she'd been without a phone for so long, she just kept letter writing. So even when she was able to talk, she could have given up the letter writing at that point. She doesn't. She writes pretty consistently until about 1993. And they've had a phone at this point for a long time, because now she's just in a routine.
mm-hmm.
So I'm grateful for her not getting a phone too quickly, because it just set her in the standard.
Yeah.
At the same time, for emergencies, she's having to run across the street. In Norwood, that she had to go out to the there was basically the phone outside on the sidewalk. Now she can go to Rieselman's. But with Lou at the base, it just feels like it's probably time. Jamie, I also remember when for Gen Z, who never had to experience this, or at least I don't think they did, when the phone line was tied up with the dial-up internet. So if someone was on the internet, you couldn't call out, and then that led to messy charges, basically, as kids are trying to, using Carta.
This definitely takes me back to, like, long distance calling and, like, all of the restrictions you had on your phone. And, like, even we've never, like, in this home, never had a landline. So my kids never experienced that. They don't have they don't call they can't, if they want to talk to somebody, they have iPads and they text. So it's we don't have that. There's no get off the phone, I'm waiting for a phone call, or oh, somebody's been calling, when you would be on the phone, and somebody would call you and it'd beep in.
Yeah.
And you'd be like, nope, never mind, I'm not talking to you. So yeah, it's funny. It's definitely communication has evolved so crazy. It's been such a crazy evolution. But that was our first letter.
Yep.
And then the next letter that we have is January 26th, a little bit later.
County Line Road, Hatboro, Pennsylvania, January 26th, 1951. Dear Jeanne, I hardly know how to go about asking such a favor as this, considering all you've already done for us, and so far without repayment. But be patient while I tell my story, and then decide whatever you consider best. There is over at the base what is called the Slush Fund, which a couple of fellows started by investing $100 apiece, and from which the sailors go and borrow money, based on a payday-to-payday basis at 10% interest. In other words, if a guy finds he must have $10 in a hurry, he goes to one of the partners and borrows $10, and at payday, he repays the 10 plus $1 interest. They all feel it is worth what seems like a high interest rate to get the money in a hurry, without a lot of questions and delay in time that would be necessary if they tried to borrow it somewhere else. There are several such funds, one for each squadron or something like that, and they all thrive to an almost unbelievable proportion. The latest one started at Christmas time, and in a month or thereabouts has doubled itself. One of these men has received his shipping orders for Cuba, and of course is taking his share of the fund. The remaining partner is looking for someone to come in on it with him, and asked Lou if he'd like to. He'd have to have $100 to buy in, which of course we do not have. Lou came home with the story and asked what I thought of it, and after hearing him out, believe it would be a good investment if we had it. But I told him frankly, I didn't have the guts, in plain language, to write and ask you for any more money when we hadn't so far been able to make any start towards getting what we owed back to you. He agreed and said he didn't either, and so we should forget it. I tried to, and I guess he did too, but last night he mentioned going to the real estate agent who handled the work when we bought the house and trying to get a loan from him on the house. That I couldn't stand for at all, and while I've been telling myself to forget it entirely, I keep thinking of the money and keep saying, if it is there for the taking, I'd sure like to be on the receiving end. One fund started about 2 years ago has mounted to such a proportion that each partner withdrew from the bank enough money to buy a new car. And one man makes an extra $70 to $100 per payday. I know that 10% seems like an awful lot to ask, but when it seems to be a generally accepted thing, and nobody considers it so awful when they need the money, I keep thinking that we might just as well be drawing it as somebody else. I can tell you several instances of what they're making, but it would take too long, and if I'm to make the mailman, I can't. I question their honesty in paying back the money, and Lou insists that there are no deadbeats who welch on what they borrow. One man borrowed $300, and that means he has to pay $30 interest each payday. He is making his interest payments and is still carrying the debt of $300. He has already paid back his initial loan in interest, and the guy who loaned it said he didn't care when he ever paid it back, 'cause he's already got his $300 back, plus a lot more in interest alone. I've done some wrestling with my conscience, but my money-grubbing tendencies keep beating me down with the argument that since they're going to borrow it one place or another, we might as well get in on it too. By the time I've written this far, I've talked myself out of sending this and into it again, and I don't know whether to send it or not. I couldn't ask Papa for it, and I'd hate to have you tell him. I'd put the bite on you again. I'd be ashamed for Glenn to think we were pulling your finances all the time, and I know that it is finances that keep you from getting married now. I don't know what your finances are either, and I've said all this to Lou, who keeps saying, well, I know, so just don't ask her, just forget about it, don't write, but I know how he feels underneath. I'm ashamed to have gone this long without paying you something at least on the note, and I want you to write and tell me if you paid Papa the $300 you borrowed him to loan us. Well, Now I feel like a bigger heel to write this to you, for I know you'll feel you ought to send it because it is us asking, and I feel like a worse heel because I know how you'll feel, and I know I'm taking advantage of you. I'm sending this airmail because I know Lou has to know in a hurry, so you sit right down and answer it airmail just as soon as you get it, and if you send it, you'll be doing us a favor, and I don't know, in my present state of mind, maybe you'll be doing us a favor if you don't. I don't consider this a letter, so I'll stop right now and write again in a day or two. Love, Sweetie. Answer immediately.
So
Yeah.
she did borrow money from her father and from Jean, and it seems like Jean borrowed money from her father too to buy that house that they have.
Right. Yep.
And she was supposed to be paying that back. And I think there was a letter. I feel like there was a letter where she was paying it back. Maybe she was paying Chester back.
I think so, starting with probably Chester.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And they have the loan on the house just from the GI Bill.
Mm-hmm.
So they've still got that. They've got the mortgage going on County Line Road. I don't like the feeling, and Sweetie immediately doesn't like the feeling of Lou talking to the real estate agent. That's not a good vibe for getting into something like this. And I have no doubt that it does work out for some people at the base, but it seems like everybody's doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And the other concern is if everybody's doing this, eventually it's going to get to the point whereby the free market is going to take over at a certain point, and this is going to become less valuable over time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it's interesting to know that this is what the sailors were doing at the base, that this was their whole network. It's just easier than going to a bank. Hey guys, I need XYZ. And then the problem is a lot of them are probably going very much into debt into their with their friends simply because they're just making interest payments.
Yeah.
The one that loans 10 is just paying back I'll just pay back $1. We'll just put it off down the line. So
well, clearly that one gentleman was only paying interest.
Yeah. And so the other guy was like, okay. Well,
yeah, he paid like 30. He was paid for a month and paid back like what he had borrowed just in interest. But it's like you need to make those payments. But I can see like where the dangers would be. You know, if in a group of friends, you don't want anybody to be upset. You don't want anybody. And like he said, they're Welchers. This kind of thing is inevitable in that. So but she's kind of salivating. She's like, oh my gosh, like this could be another way we're getting money. This could be another way we're getting money. She's, trying to think of ways. And so I can appreciate it, but also it seems that she's asking Jean for more money and she hasn't even started paying her back like the money that she's already borrowed from her.
Not good. So at the same time, I'm glad she was honest with Jean and wrote the letter. I'm glad both for historical reasons. It's interesting to know this is going on, but yeah, just the whole thing where she's going back and forth. But if Lou's at the point where he's talking to the real estate agent, they better have exhausted all options first if he's serious about looking into this.
Let's talk about that too, because it's Jean who they're asking. Dit has money.
Yeah.
Like Dit, like why is Dit never somebody who they tap it like that's like no. And I mean I don't know, Joe and Marguerite, I mean they have some money, but like she works, he works, they have children, they live in New York. Like did he ever think of asking any of them? Probably not.
Oh man, I didn't even think about that, but every single time this comes up, they don't go to Sydney and they don't go to Dit at all. Yeah.
I mean, she did ask like for a magazine subscription because she knew that would, be easy for them. Right. But like, when it comes to like borrowing money and stuff, like they tap Iowa, like they tap like states away, never like in their neighborhood.
Never that.
So that's interesting. That's interesting, like a dynamic that I had noticed. But I do think that Lou has a closeness with Sweetie's family that Sweetie does not have that same kind of closeness with his family. She's close. But I think he really truly loves Jean. Like I think that they have that really great friendship. But and then we get another, like this is interesting. Can you set us up for this one because it's not really a letter?
Yeah,
It's
This
kind of
is
strange.
like a follow-up, back to Jeanne that's happening here. So we have an entirely new element in the story that's coming in here. You just said, like, Lou really trusts Jeanne, and that's great. And they've always had this network going. But now there's an unknown quantity in the mix, a bit of an unknown quantity, because Jean's now with Glenn, and she makes a note of this. Like, is all of this the finances? All of a sudden, the finances come up, and then Glenn's being mentioned. So it's not clear exactly, and there's still that tension. She's writing a letter just very objectively to her sister when she asks about the money, but that tension is still there. There was never a point, and she even says this isn't a letter. Isn't that interesting that she writes a whole letter and this isn't really a letter, aka we haven't still hashed out whatever's going on between the two of us, but I'm just going to go past that and ask for this thing or get some advice from you. In the meantime, totally as an aside, there's going to be some sort of feedback coming from Iowa. And the other thing is, she said, write immediately. And the next letter that comes in, we have no date on it, but we have to know that it has to fall very quickly after this because it references the letter from the 26th. So this is basically what happens subsequently to the request she made.
Dear Jeanne, I shall add just a note to go in with your letter, but won't have time to make it very long. By the time you've received this, we will have your answer to the letter I wrote begging you for the loan. I didn't tell Lou I'd written until after the letter was gone. He seems most anxious now to hear from you and seems to feel sure that as long as we've asked, you'll not deny the loan. He hasn't said so, but I can tell by the way he talks and the way he asks the first thing when he gets inside the door, if the mail has come yet. I received and acknowledged the ear-banging you gave me through Lewis, and sat down and wrote a 7-page journal, and then a day or two later, when Lewis flared up with his tonsils, wrote again to you and the folks, and then the third letter begging the loan, and so far haven't received any letter from you. So I shall return the ear-banging, and you can get busy and write me. I even wrote to Glenn, and haven't heard from him either. You're both a couple of jerks. You wrote some time ago about how Glenn felt about getting married now when he is obligated to his kids, and that she might make it tough on him in regards to the support angle. Well, of course, I do not pretend to know all the details and so cannot entirely understand what the situation is, but frankly, I'm not in favor of this putting it off and putting it off. I didn't realize until I'd written asking for the loan the position I'd put you and us in, for I remember one of the arguments was if I want to loan money, I can feel free to do so on my own without any recrimination from Glenn. Now I see that I made a mistake in bolstering your argument, and I did. My conscience bothers me, and I get to feeling guilty for fear that I might also be the cause for your not getting married now when you ought to. I do feel badly to think that we haven't paid you anything on the original loan, but I tried to make you understand that this money I'm asking for would help to make money to pay off our debts. I'm not renewing my plea for the money. If your letter comes saying you couldn't send it, that is okay, and I'm not pleading for it against your decision. I'm trying to apologize and ease my conscience some, for it has been giving me hell for the last week and before that too. When Lewis goes into school, I'm going to get a job to start paying off what we owe, if Lou isn't sent out by then. If he is, I'm going to get G-Mom to come and stay and get a real job. I hope your pleurisy is all gone now, and that you're feeling okay. I hope you'll not feel bad about our bleeding you for money. And write soon, won't you?
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
We just got like so much information that we had no idea about. Well, first, let's talk about Glenn. And I think that you had mentioned that he was married before?
Yeah, I'd mentioned it, but this is the first time in the letter we officially see this information in the collection, that he was previously married and he does have children through that other marriage. Now there's a question of, is there child support payments that he's making to his ex-wife? All of this is really unclear. The other thing we have is they haven't set a date for the wedding yet.
And she mentions they keep putting it off and putting it off. Like, what is going on there? Sweetie got married really quickly,
Oh,
in
yeah.
4 months after meeting Lou. But that was the war. So, a little bit of a different timeline then. Still, something's going on here. Sweetie's getting more and more and more upset. And then she gives that line, "You're both a couple of jerks."
Oh, I
We've never seen that.
know. That was powerful. She doesn't get mean like that.
No, that was meant 100% as it was written. Yeah. She's upset.
Yeah, she was mad, but she's also feels a little guilty. She feels like she's contributing to this, contributing to them putting off the marriage. She's contributing to them financially. She's also arguing things that she doesn't know because she hasn't heard from Jeanne. Like she's saying, "I feel badly and stuff. I tried to make you understand. That's what I'm." And so she's actually arguing points, I think, that she feels maybe Jeanne isn't written. So, and I always have this it makes me feel bad that we don't ever really get to see any letters from Jeanne. So we don't really, we can only kind of guess what she's, talking about. This letter is definitely, she's wrestling with a lot. She's wrestling with a lot of feelings right now.
Yeah, I think she's also upset with Lou because she's on this anxiety. She's from this communication or lack of communication with Jeanne and with Glenn. And in comes Lou every day. "Hey, is there anything in the mail from Jeanne?" And if I were Sweetie, I would be like, "I don't want to hear it from you." No, I'm sure there's a tension there. And she's like, "You're putting me in a hard place having to bother my sister. We're already upset about other things. We already owe her money. She's trying to get married. You want to get into this thing. And I get it that it's a good deal. And you're really excited about that." And then, because clearly at this point, she's told him that she's written the letter basically to get him to stop talking to the real estate agent so they don't get in and over their heads. And I could just see her being completely, I knew my grandmother. I could just see her being completely frustrated. And this is scary. I remember the look in her eyes when she was upset. And I'm like, no, this is not comfortable. So,
well, and she's talking about getting a job.
Yeah.
She's
First
talking
time.
about going back to work. She's talking about having G-Mom live with her instead of Dit.
How's that going to happen?
That's what I said. I was like, I don't think that she'd give her up. She's got 2 kids and she's got bowling parties and things that she has to go to. This is not.
Dit's got to do Dit stuff.
She's got Dit things to do, and so it definitely things are kind of really tense.
Yeah,
it's building and building. Yeah, I'm really curious to see where this one's going to go. So we do have one more letter that she does write. We don't get any kind of resolution.
None. Yeah.
So we're going to have to wait, I guess, until maybe next week. I don't know. I haven't read those letters yet.
Tune in next week. Oh my goodness. Let me just say the episode title for next week's episode is "As Long as You Both Shall Live," which it sounds so nice to hear that term.
But it's not.
It's going to boil over next week. So if you've been waiting to be like, where is this all heading to? Yeah. So, but she is going to write to the rest of the family. We're going to wrap up January 1951 here with a sort of a brief circular letter a little bit.
County Line Road, Hatboro, Pennsylvania, January 31st, 1951. Dear Mama and Papa and the family, I remembered your wedding anniversary every day for 2 weeks and then forgot to get my letter off to you on time. I shall try to make up for it now, though this may be a short letter too. I received Papa's letter yesterday, I think. No, day before yesterday. I'd like to tell you that Louis seems to be over his cold and his tonsils seem clear, and I'm not going to worry about him now for a while, unless he gets markedly worse. I shall follow your advice, though, as well as keep you well informed. Lou is very pleased about the wood, and will figure out what he needs as soon as he is sure himself. I am anxious to hear what you thought about the magazine I sent, and the picture, and a good answer to the long letter I sent to the clan. So far my receipts are 0. I am glad, and I'm sure you are, that the garage is so near completion. It means a lot to know your cars aren't out in the weather. I know I'm glad to think that ours is well protected. We are having our worst weather of the winter now.
We were warned via TV that the cold was on its way, and it started getting cold here on Saturday, and has stayed bad. Monday we had rain and sleet, and the roads were covered with ice. Tuesday it was cold and snowed, and today it is bitter cold, and snowing and sleeting, and both Lou and I agreed that this is the worst we've had all season. I'm glad you could see Florence and the children, even though it was a quick and enforced visit, and I also said thank goodness they had a good car to make the trip in. I hope you suffered no ill effects from a late drive like that. I have been warned that getting a school bus out this way was going to be a real project and possibly an open declaration of war. And so on Monday, when Lou had the duty, I had the car, I took my foot in my hand and went to see the principal of the school and talked to her about getting the bus past the house. She received me kindly and without any indication of hostility and took my name and information and said she'd write to the state board about it. It seems that County Line Road, being a state road, would have to be approved by the state board for a bus route, and she could promise me nothing now. I have heard, too, of a woman who lives down the road who is afraid to trust her children on the road and has to walk them to the bus in the morning and then goes to meet the bus in the afternoon. The law says that no child shall walk more than 1.5 miles to meet the bus. I thought it was 1 mile and went armed with a speedometer reading, but had no argument when she said 1.5 miles. She seemed more inclined to think they would send him as an exchange student to Horsham School rather than get the bus by the house. I discovered, though, that a great many of the children are the same ones he enjoyed in Sunday school, and hope that he can go with them, for it would make it more pleasant. I'm not going to give up easily, and already talked with the mother who has to walk her kids, and am going to the man who lives on the farm behind us, for I understand he is some kind of township official, and he has a granddaughter about ready for school, and may prove a worthwhile ally. I haven't done much of any consequence for several days. Aside from the usual chores of housekeeping and cooking, etc., there are few sales on account of bad weather, and if there were some way of having them, it would be too cold and unpleasant.
I always love it when she mentions things like Mr. Orley, the farmer.
Yeah, the farmer.
And so he's a town official too. But so she's trying to get the bus, so I gotta fight, bureaucracy and red tape.
Bureaucracy, having to deal with the state because it's County Line Road. At least the school seems to know what's going on. They're like, okay, here's who you're going to talk to. I found it interesting that it's like, if the child has to walk less than 1.5 miles, they technically don't need to assign a bus route. I'm wondering how much that's changed in all the years, like how those rules work of how they do determine to put the bus routes in place. I doubt it's 1.5 miles in this area anymore. Like no one's walking 1.5 miles anywhere in southeastern Pennsylvania without bus routes. I can't see it. Now, I've waited on the County Line Road behind school buses before, so I can confirm there's definitely bus routes there. It's a very popular area. It'd be unusual to not have that. She also mentions the Horsham School, so we get another shout out of another township there. Hatboro, of course, it's she's on the county line. They live on the Bucks County side, but on the other side of County Line Road is Montgomery County, or Montco as we call it in this area. Hatboro, which by the way, I don't think I've ever mentioned this, in their signs as you drive through Hatboro, they have little top hats on their signs. It's really adorable.
It's cute.
But the main school is Hatboro Horsham. So if you're wondering about the Horsham School, it's not like a private school. It's just Horsham's like the neighboring township. So they're like, well, we might have to go over here. So that's why she's like, but he likes all the people he knows over here because he's going to the Neshaminy or Presbyterian Church, which is more on like the Bucks County side of things. And she's like, well, she wants him to be comfortable if he's going to be going to school. So she's going to take her foot in her hand and figure out what she can do to resolve this issue. And by the way, to take her foot in her hand, she uses that phrase a lot. I'd done this research a while ago, and I think I'd mentioned it. It's a play on a phrase from the book Gone with the Wind, which of course is her favorite movie. So that's where that comes from, that saying, but it's her own thing. But interesting content. You mentioned the farmer. We also get the mention of Chester building the garage.
That makes me smile every time. I'm just so happy we found that you have that letter that he buried in the garage.
In the bottle. In the bottle.
I'm so glad.
If there's any new listeners today, I wanted to call it a few episodes here because there's another one that's going to make mention of as we go into the second half of this letter. Farmer Frank, you can find out more about him in episode 70, Shake Hands with a Farmer. With regards to Chester's building the garage, you have to go back and listen to episode 86. Second letter in that episode is Chester writing to you, the listener, about all the hard work he did to build his garage. So that's episode 86, Every Day in Every Way. I'm getting madder and madder. But we're heading into some really great content here with the second half of this letter.
With the second half, I did want to point out too, like before we leave this first half, they are very dependent on their TV.
Yeah, immediately.
They are very dependent on their TV. Like this is another one of those monthly bills because they did buy that on time. Remember she said on time instead of on credit. They bought their TV.
Right.
And even though it was a cheaper version, like they didn't have to get things, they were able to buy an antenna and have somebody else set it up for them. They really depend on that for like the weather and entertainment. And when they had that giant storm that we just had, that episode we just had, Remember the Good Old Days.
Yeah.
They were very, very sad. That was one of the things that Lou said he was really missing was his TV. Yeah. So speaking of technology and speaking of how much we depend on it, but yes, we do have a second half of this letter.
Oh, I've been meaning to tell you that when I did up the last shirts for the old gent in Doylestown, and we went up one night to return them, we found the little old lady quite upset and very tired. She explained that she hadn't slept a bit, well, since the police had called the night before to say that the little old man, out for some liquid refreshment, had been struck by a car, his leg broken, and he had been taken to the hospital. How he happened to get from Doylestown to Willow Grove, where it occurred, I don't understand, and she hasn't the details quite straight either, but he was there. I think undoubtedly he had been drinking, because I understand he is eager to get to a tap room at every opportunity. He was crossing the street, and was struck by a car, driven by a 15-year-old kid. He seems to have gotten off fairly well, as his leg was broken somewhere between his ankle and knee, and that is his only injury aside from some minor bruises. He has an idea that he is going to sue the father for a tidy sum, say 4,000 or 5,000 over and above the hospital bill. The insurance company has already contacted the lady and assured her that they were more than anxious to take care of the bills, but he has some big ideas about getting set on Easy Street for the rest of his life. She insists he will have to stay in the hospital until he is able to be up and about on crutches and able to make the stairs, because they can't bring another bed downstairs, and she isn't able to wait on him. We keep saying we ought to go down and visit him in the hospital, but with the weather bad, we've been putting it off and putting it off. She seems to be making out all right alone, I might say, even enjoying the quiet and solitude.
All right, I'm going to pause here. Yep.
So the poor little lady that 90 some years old, who made them a lovely Thanksgiving dinner. They spent Thanksgiving with them.
Yep.
Her brother, who's younger than her, but still like 80 or something.
Yeah.
And he was out drinking, and he got to Willow.
Yeah, he gets to Willow Grove, which we've heard the name Willow Grove on this podcast before. Lou works at NAS Willow Grove. This is over by Hatboro. It's about 25 minute drive today, and probably still back then, from Doylestown. I don't think he's driving. There's no indication at all of that. And Doylestown's not a small town. There's a lot of bars in town, clearly. And she makes the indications here without saying that he has a drinking issue. You know, he's going to find a tap room, you know, what does she say? Liquid refreshment. Like, he's very much drunk and makes his way to Willow Grove in the middle of the winter and manages to get hit by a car driven by a 15-year-old kid and is now in the hospital for this.
And he's like,
fortunately, he wasn't killed, but yeah.
And he's like, I'm going to sue you. I'm going to sue you. Like, he clearly is fine. But, like, yeah, what the heck is the story with that? Whatever. This is crazy. These people, I love this couple. I hope we, like, I'm serious. Every time I'm like, please, can we hear about the couple in Doylestown? Well, they're not a couple. They're brother and sister.
They're brother and sister, yeah. But,
I'm telling you.
Yeah, and then.
So he's fine. She's fine. Like, there's really nothing wrong, but man, crazy.
Just one more thing. And for our listeners that are not familiar with the brother and sister in Doylestown, episode 85, that's the other one to go back to, called literally Up to Doylestown. That's when we get introduced to these two individuals. Yeah. Every time, by the way, Jamie, I don't know if you're familiar with the musical Annie. A lot of people will be. There's a song called Easy Street. So whenever she said Easy Street, I just had this replay of that song. It's really, really great. About just, whatever. $4,000 to $5,000 is a lot in 1951 as well here. So
I'm trying to lose weight and find it very difficult to do. I eat as little as possible and still don't seem to lose an ounce. Very discouraging, I might say. But since I have no money to buy new clothes, I'll have to lose weight so I can continue to wear the old ones. Elizabeth doesn't seem to lose any either, and forgive me if I sound grasping, but I'm drooling over some of her clothes. Lou put an ad in the paper, and though we had a few answers, sold none of the antiques we'd advertised. We did have a couple come down from New Hope, and they bought 1 chair and a lamp. We double what we paid for them, so we feel we did all right, and still sold cheap enough that they will probably come back hunting other bargains. We've been wondering if you got your TV in good working order. We surely do appreciate ours on these cold wintry nights, and would feel like orphans if anything should happen to it. I must stop now and get stew started for supper. These will go out on the morning pickup. Hope everybody is okay and could wade through my last journal. Even the slow readers ought to be through by now and ready to answer it. We'll write again soon. You do likewise. Love to all. Sweetie.
So when we compare, like, she's obviously got something going on with Jeanne. And she has, like, a lot of things going on. Lou really wants to invest in this slush fund, and I think that's probably, he sees what it's doing for other people and wants that for himself. So she's dealing with that. But she kind of leaves all of that to the side and, like, writes her letter. You know what I'm saying? Like, she gets in there and she writes her letter. And something that I love in here is they sold some antiques. Or they sold some pieces. It's like beginning. This is like the start. Like, we're getting to see, like, they're in the business, and here they are. They advertise, and somebody came down and somebody bought something.
Yeah. That's where they should be focusing their time. That's where their skills are, not the slush fund. And she can work on that now. She'd advertised the Regina. We heard that in the letter on the 18th. They don't sell the Regina. Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah.
I'm so glad they never did. Because I think it's one of those pieces that she's like, I don't really want to sell this. So, and she doesn't ever. So, yeah. Thank goodness. Yeah.
Thank goodness.
But the chairs, she had to let go of a chair. I always say a tear dropped whenever she has to let go of a chair. My dad, by the way, thinks that one of the chairs he has is the captain's chair that was mentioned in one of the previous episodes.
Oh, the one that the man was not willing to sell?
Yeah, we think it's possible that could be the captain's chair. So I'm going to get a picture of that because that looks very distinct. It's a very low chair, but who knows? She loves dealing in chairs. So we'll see how it goes from there on out. But that's it for letters for today's episode. The big one everyone's been waiting for, I promise you, is the one we're going to start with in next week's episode. It's time to finally get to the end of this nonsense with Jeanne, whatever is going on. And I promise you, it has been worth the wait.
This was really great, and I cannot wait for next week's episode. We'll see you guys all next Sunday. Bye, everyone.